there in the world than Jimi Hendrix. I think over time, Jimi Hendrix's star will slowly fade a little, and Eddie's star is going to rise, and it's going to be around for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Do any of your photographer friends try and influence you to get their picture on the cover of your book?
There is a little bit of that goes on, but they have literally no truck on that because I'm already fighting the publisher for what goes on the cover, too. So it's really just between me and them, and I'm just trying to get something I like halfways because I don't want something that I don't like on there, right? So, they do like that. I mean, they would love to have it on the cover, but, I mean, the photographers are over the moon for the pages and pages of stuff that's in there by them anyways. So.
Were they trying to get you to have Eddie with the Frankenstein guitar on the cover?
You mean the red and white? Or?
Yeah, the red and white black stripe, because it's more identifiable.
I consider them all Frankensteins in a way, right?
Yeah. Well, they all are, but that's, I guess, more visually identifiable. That red with black and white stripes says Eddie Van Halen. It's like when you see the Stones tongue, it says the Stones. It's almost like Eddie has his own logo in a way. It's rare that you see that, but that pattern which he has trademarked is what he created, and it's known to him. The bumblebees on the cover, I think it's definitely more of a hardcore fan-oriented shot, but it's a beautiful picture. And also the elation on Eddie's face. I mean, he is so in the moment in this picture on the cover. Yeah. It's an action shot. His hair is blurring, but his face is clear, and he's obviously ripping on a chord there. It's a nice picture. It really kind of symbolizes what the book is like, because there's a lot of stuff in there for the hardcore fans, which is great. But in terms of getting a little deeper into the book, you talk about Diver Down in the book. Diver Down from 1982, obviously Dave and I, we actually did an episode called Don't Be Down on Diver Down, because that album gets a lot of shit, and you even mentioned some of that in the book. But don't you think that album really was the transition for the band? The sales were not doing well at that point. That album came and kind of saved them, escalated them, brought them to a new level, and actually set the stage up for 1984. Don't you agree?
Yes, it did that. I mean, I'm a little down on Diver Down for all the obvious reasons.
Right.
Short, the covers, blah, blah, blah. I love Little Guitars, though. I mean, that's just one of my favorite songs of all time of theirs. But and I love the sound of it and the joie de vivre of it or whatever. And you're right. I mean, sure, it set them up for fame. So what that means is that the instincts of the label and the instincts of David Lee Roth were correct, that, they needed a commercial boost, and it worked. But who knows? I mean, if they would have made another Fair Warning / Women and Children First, Eddie Writes Everything, creative exploration album, maybe it would have done amazing too, right?
Right, it could be,
We don't know that, but yeah, I mean, covers is a cheap ploy that usually works, right? And look at the hits they had off of that. Pretty Woman and Dancing in the Streets and Where Have All the Good Times Gone is even played on the radio all the time. So
That's right.
But it has some jokey tunes on there as well, and then it has the gratuitous sound effect stuff. And
it's a party album. Now, you've worked on a few documentaries as well. Do you think we'll ever see a proper Van Halen documentary?
Well, that's the kind of thing where you don't see stuff like that happening when there is a lot of drama and, reclusiveness of a band and people just being very protective and shut in. And Van Halen had a lot of that, and wars between the two lead singers, and who knows, where relations stand between Alex and these people. And, when a band fights a lot, that's when you can't get it together to have this stuff going, because nobody wants to have that drama. Nobody wants to start a Eddie Van Halen book like Steve Rosen did, and then have, Eddie change his mind and say he doesn't want it to come out. So if you're making a documentary, if at all you're dependent on the band to approve things or give you stuff to put it together, when the band is known to be, touchy and cranky, that's when things don't happen, right? So that's why when you don't see things on certain, it's just too much work for people, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you hope it would happen, but this is the kind of thing that would probably happen with somebody who's a buddy of Alex's, and it'll be a local movie house production team, whatever, filmmaker, who'll probably get together with Alex and they'll sort it out. What I'm saying is it would probably have to be an inside job.
Right, yeah. Do you also think that the failure of Van Halen 3 kind of broke Eddie in a way? It also stopped him producing music for a while, and his life sort of spiraled a bit after that album.
Boy, I really don't know. I haven't seen in the press, any sort of specific correlation of depression based on that thing not doing well. I don't see a lot of proof for that. It just might be the substance abuse at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, obviously, creatively, it wasn't as terrible as album as it was commercially. I mean, it is hard to listen to in terms of there not being a lot of songs on it, I suppose, or good songs, if you put on your A&R hat, right?
Yeah, well, it's not...
I loved Eddie's lead vocal on it. I thought he did a great job singing. I have no problem with Eddie singing. I was surprised, and I thought he should have sung more after hearing that.
Yeah. Well, I actually like the album. I think it could have been produced better and cleaned up. I think it really wasn't fully developed. There's some stuff on there that I would lop off, but, I think personally, I believe that the failure of that really sent him down a hole. I mean, that's because things really unraveled for him professionally and personally all in that point. I feel bad for it because I think he was really felt a little trapped in a box with the Van Halen brand. There's some stuff on that album that, I don't know, like people just don't give it a chance. Like there's songs like From Afar or Year to the Day, and he tried to do different things there. You listen to Once, you listen to From Afar, you listen to Year to the Day. Those are different directions for a Van Halen. It's almost like people wouldn't let him go there. And it's interesting, if you listen to some of what Wolfie said, that's where his head was at musically. And when he went to do A Different Kind of Truth, Wolfie was bringing out some of the old demos to get the band back into that old Van Halen mindset. And then he ended up getting shit for that, which was ridiculous. So here's a guy who puts out an album which, maybe is his more weird experimental album, and he gets shit for that, and he gets, piled on. He ends up doing a half-ass reunion with Sammy and a couple of songs, and that, sold well, but just, wasn't really fantastically creative. And then when he comes out with a brand new album with Roth, which everybody's been waiting for, Different Kind of Truth, and he really puts his heart into it, and that album, I think, is absolutely tremendous and completely underrated. And it's amazing that that you can't get more old school Van Halen, and he still gets shit for that. So I almost think that he felt a little kind of hurt by the whole thing, because it's almost like, if you're a fan of me, why won't you go on the ride with me? Why do you want Jamie's crying again?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to, I think the lead singer is so important in every band. I mean, I think he shouldn't have gone out of California for a lead singer. And then Gary comes with some fame and some good vibes. People generally liked Extreme. It wasn't a band. I like Extreme. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But he started singing a little bit like Sammy on it, so the fans would go, "Oh, you're trying to sing a little bit like Sammy."
Right.
I didn't think the lyrics were that great on it.
Right.
He also had a little bit of sort of a feminine stage presence. Right. He had that sort of actorly sense to him.
Yeah.
And that all basically happened because of the shared management, right?
Right.
So yeah, I don't think he should have gone out of California for a lead singer. That was one thing. And I love Different Kind of Truth. I think the problem with that album is it was just almost like a little too extreme and a little bit too guitar, bass, and drums. I mean, there's no keyboards on it, right? At all?
No.
There's a little bit in Tattoo.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that. I thought there was just a tiny bit. It's almost like, why did you even break the record here, right? It's quite extreme. I mean, there's some other songs on there, You and Your Blues or whatever. I mean, there's a few things that are not flat out blazing heavy metal or old school hard rock. See, one of the problems with that album is there are 2 or 3 songs that do sound dated because they are old, right?
Yeah.
But most of the old songs don't sound dated. So
Right.
that's cool about
Yeah.
it. I mean, it just shows how talented Van Halen
Right.
was.
Right.
But so there are 2 or 3 that sound a little helix. All of it is not hit material. So it's lacking those big singles in a way. Although Tattoo I thought was a perfectly decent single. I like it.
I like it a lot too, but I would have started with She's the Woman and followed up with Stay Frosty.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
I think those...
Yeah, it makes sense.
And you do really great videos for those, and I would have given Dave the mic. Let him go out and talk to the press. No one let Dave do press. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is a biggest mistake going. My biggest issue with A Different Kind of Truth is Interscope Records. They should have never been the record company promoting that album. That was an absolute disaster. And I'm
You know what also is a disaster? That title. That title is so hard to remember. Half the time I have to stop and think, is it Another Kind of Truth? I hate titles. Number one, so here's the thing. It's a complicated title, hard to remember.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of boring words strung together,
Right.
too many words, and they're all boring.
Right, that don't mean
and
anything.
it's very negative. It's like, we lie to you all the time.
I know. It's true. And then to do that cover, you want to explain to me why they revamped the Commodore's cover? Why would they do that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't. I'm sure they didn't know the Commodore's cover.
Oh, come
but
on.
It's kind of like, Dave, no, because it's a cover of it's a train. It's a common train.
It looks exactly like the cover.
Yeah, but Dave, I don't think, well, maybe Roth may have been familiar with it, but I don't think anybody went and said, oh, that Commodore's cover is pretty cool. Let's use it for ours. I think Al or Dave or whomever was like, oh, this is a great picture of a train. We're going to put it on the album. Boom. Done.
Hey,
I don't think it's a terrible cover either. I mean, it fits the Van Halen. Like, Van Halen generally has not great album covers
Never.
anyways, but it does fit the idea of a simple, iconic image with muted colors. It's not bad. It's a good T-shirt image. You know, you think of that rule of it's got to look good on a T-shirt. It's not terrible.
Right.
I still maintain that the most terrible thing is that title. It's so like, you know what? This thing about lying really gets to me. It's like it sounds like a band airing their dirty laundry, how they bicker amongst themselves, how they lie to each other, and how, you know, they don't talk out in the press very often, but if they do, they're probably hiding something. So they're probably lying to their fans. So just everything about the title is just bad vibes.
Well, Martin, I want to get your take on something. You know the whole Claudio story with Sammy Hagar?
No, what's that?
Here we go.
You know how the whole story of how Sammy got into the band?
No.
You're not familiar with that?
Oh, are you talking about the car, getting your car repaired?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Is
listen,
the Claudio the mechanic?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
okay.
So listen to this. So if you really do the tracking here, they tell this nice little story about how Sammy and Eddie had the same car mechanic. He fixes very expensive, exotic, imported cars. And Sammy had his car in the shop, and Eddie brought his car into the shop. And Claudio, who is this gentleman who is apparently an incredible mechanic, was fixing both of their cars. And he says, hey, Eddie, you should call Sammy. You need a singer. Call Sammy. It is my understanding that Sammy, I think, put the bug in Claudio's ear to kind of nudge him to put the thought in Eddie's head to use him for the singing job, to call him up. And I think there's something going on there. I am going to get to the bottom of this, but...
That's not your understanding. That's your conspiracy.
That sounds so much like Sammy, though, because one thing I love about Sammy is he's Mr. Showbiz, right? He's a working musician. He's a sandwich band act from the old days, you know, figuring out how to get a hit, cover this, cover that. He's basically John Mellencamp of a slightly harder version, right?
Yeah, there you go.
He's just so practical and grounded, and he realizes it's a business, and he figures out how to make the business work for him, right?
Yep. And let me ask you this. To that answer, do you think Sam and Dave will tour again for marketing purposes?
Sam and Dave. Wow. Why? Has there been talk about that?
No. I'm just saying, if you consider the situation, okay, there's no more Van Halen. And if you put Sam together with Dave, not together on stage. I'm talking about as two touring acts together. It makes a nice package for the viewer because they get both sides of Van Halen.
Yeah, but okay, so here's a couple things. These guys' voices are going on them. Even Sam's is starting to go on him, right?
Well, he's 73.
He's an old dude. He's 72, pushing 73, I think, right?
He's 73 now, yeah.
73. So he's 73 now. So they're running out of steam with their voices. I think they probably are running out of steam with needing or wanting to do entrepreneurial things. And Sam also has, Dave does to some, well, a much lesser extent, I imagine, but Sam has a nice, cozy family